You don't need to be super observant to notice that culture has been flattened across the globe. People look and act the same, whether it's New York City, Paris, or Shanghai. The masses are converging towards the same material and cultural goods. Girls are wearing the same Lululemon sets, get the same nose job, and are all into Pilates and matcha. Hipsters, who base their whole life philosophy on being non-conformists, end up looking the same. And corporate people are signaling their superiority on LinkedIn by climbing Mount Everest. Most people have no idea what their raw preferences are. They're fooled and swayed by shrewd advertisers, brands, and influencers. Now, this is not new. Thinkers like Aristotle or Rene Girard figured out that human beings are highly mimetic creatures. And to get a solid understanding of how these forces flatten the culture across the globe and how to resist them, we need to look into various thinkers who really changed the way I view the world. Anthropologist Rene Girard and his work on mimetic desire, Pierre Bourdieu and his work on taste, social class, and distinction, and biologist Ahmad Zahavi. And finally, in the last part of the video, I'm going to share 4 ways that helped me resist these mimetic forces and keep some agency in my own preferences, desires, and life choices. Some mental models completely shift your view of the world. There is a before and after you read about Rene Girard's theory of mimetic desire. Girard's work is a lot more complex, but we're going to focus on his analysis of how human desires emerge through mimesis. The theory can explain how social media caught on so quickly across the globe, or how finance bros and hipsters look and act the same. It also explains why you rarely show romantic interest towards someone unless you know they're desired by other people. See, once we have a model, a person whose judgment we respect and value, we unconsciously start to mimic their desires. And that model can also be a rival who's pursuing the same desires we now pursue. This mostly operates outside of our awareness, but it dictates what we value throughout our lives. I've seen it in college when most of my peers chose to pursue finance just because most people deemed it valuable, only to end up hating their jobs. Your peers are some of the strongest mediators of desire, and the contagion that could have been more localized in the past is on steroids in the era of social media. People's idiosyncratic preferences are getting flattened, resulting in most people pursuing a few industries and jobs across the board, and the whole economy is adapting to that. Now, being aware of these mimetic forces is the first step. Once you start shedding some light on it, they can lose some of their power and you can gain some of your agency back. Now, the second step is to choose the right models. As Rene Girard explains, we're inherently imitative creatures, and it's unnatural for us to not imitate. Nassim Taleb shared in one of his interviews how envy can be a good signal to find those right models.
You gotta figure out what people are envious of. So, if you're in a hedge fund business and you have $500 million in the bank and someone else has $600 million, you're gonna be envious of that person. I was always envious of people who had more erudition. And you realize that that's what makes me tick, is I don't wanna, so you feel it's not, being envious is not good. But at the same time, if you figure out who you tend to envy.
However, if people you envy are the ones with the most toys, the most expensive watches, the most exquisite lifestyles, then that can be corrosive to your soul. But if you envy someone for their independent thinking, their erudition and culture, determination, courage, sovereignty, then mimesis can be a positive force that can get you closer to those virtues. Now, today, people online use words like LARPing, cosplaying, or performative to call out someone who's playing a role, someone who's pursuing interests, consuming material or cultural goods that are not aligned with their raw preferences. You can just sense that it's not authentic and that they're out of place. So part 2 of this video is about a thinker whose work expands on taste, social class, and distinction. The French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu. Bourdieu was a renowned thinker in France, but less known in the US outside of sociology circles. His monumental work La Distinction is his account on taste, social class reproduction, and signaling. This is where LARPing or performative action can make sense. Say you meet a person who poses as someone who reads philosophy, claims to love classical Renaissance art, shows interest in history, talks about Dostoevsky, Dumas, and Proust, but you can just feel that it lacks any depth. Their sophistication is shallow and superficial. They have no genuine thirst for knowledge or culture. They're just using knowledge and art as a way to enhance their status. Nietzsche calls these people the cultural Philistine. People who lack idiosyncratic preferences take the packaged paths to culture to enhance their social status. Now you can also sense that it takes a lot of effort for these people to play that role. Maybe they took on these desires to conform to their new social class they just joined thanks to upward mobility. Now they're invited to pretentious cocktail parties and they have to keep up the conversation. Bourdieu explains that one of the ways the upper class tend to maintain their social position is by providing a favorable habitus for the kids. The habitus is the environment where their kids grew up. Early exposure to literature, cultural trips, art, poetry, museums, discussions about politics, business, or economics at dinner is what Bourdieu would call a favorable habitus. This translates to a rich cultural capital that the person can convert later on in life to a higher position in the social hierarchy, especially in more static countries like France or Italy, where upward mobility is less prevalent. Same people tend to pass on their social position. A study showed that in Florence, Italy, the wealthiest families have been the same since the 15th century. I witnessed this firsthand in my 7 years living in Paris. You meet someone from the bourgeoisie or the upper class, and you could see that throughout their childhood, they've been exposed to culture. They played instruments, danced ballet, read French literature very young. Listen to their parents having conversation about business, politics, or economics at the dinner table. When older, this translates to an effortless appreciation of art and culture. They can easily converse about these topics, but also in a society like the French one, especially in Paris, which is very coded, they can gain access to circles, schools that vet for that kind of knowledge in their tests, which will lead them to have top positions in government or big corporations. Not because they're the most competent or the most intelligent, but because they knew how to convert that cultural capital into economic opportunities. On the other hand, the newly rich will get wealthy through entrepreneurship or commerce. They have the technical skill, the business acumen, and risk tolerance, and will experience a drastic upward mobility. However, now that they're around wealthy people who are more established in that class through inheritance or earlier mobility, the nouveau riche will bring up codes, tastes, and traits from their previous class, which will signal to the more established ones that they recently joined the club. Now they will slowly feel pressure to conform, to drop their raw preferences and take on the new social class interests, hobbies, and desires. They're terrified of feeling inferior. Now the newly rich will start cosplaying the old money style and will almost certainly look tacky. So you start seeing these trends online about the old money style, which ironically signals that you're not from that social class, instead of just accepting one style and embracing your idiosyncratic preferences. Bourdieu also explains that another way the upper class tends to justify its position in the social class is by excluding the others. They're intentionally pursuing the cultural and material goods that are out of the reach of the masses. Once the masses start gaining access to these goods, their value gets inflated and eroded, which leads the upper class to lose interest in that and move on to the next exclusive thing. I can go on about Bourdieu, but that's the main idea behind how taste and social distinction work. And another thinker, a biologist, Ahmad Zahafi, came up with one of the most important theories in evolutionary biology that directly complements Bourdieu's work. He uncovers a surprisingly sophisticated mechanism that we evolved to signal superiority to rivals, peers, and potential mates. You may have never heard of Ahmad Zahafi, but his work was groundbreaking. Darwinian natural selection's premises are survival, fitness, and reproductive success. The most efficient species and individuals tend to reproduce and replicate their traits within their descendants. So traits that facilitate survival tend to persist. Nature does not like waste. That was the idea before Ahmad Zahafi showed that some species have features and traits that jeopardize their survival. Think of the peacock's heavy tail. It's making it more vulnerable to predators. So the peacock has this handicap, its tail, and you may wonder how did this mutation kept being selected for? And that's when sexual selection starts making sense. The bigger, the more flamboyant and colorful the tail is, the more attracted is the peahen. The tail is a costly signal to potential mates. Instead of beating his chest, surviving in spite of having a heavy tail is an honest signal that the peacock is strong and fit. All organisms, from bacteria to human beings, constantly communicate through signals. We're constantly sending and receiving signals and reacting accordingly, whether it's courtship, threats, negotiations, or prestige. An example of costly signals for human beings is what the medieval order of the Hashashins used to do. To threaten their target, instead of sending an empty threat, they used to plant a dagger right next to the target's bed while they were sleeping, with a message that said, "A dagger that's planted on the firm ground is better than one in their soft belly." Some cold shit. We're also wired to signal to others because we evolved in smaller settlements, and we had to deter people from fucking with us. You don't want to be the weakling of the tribe. While this might not make sense in big cities today, You can see variants of it in the corporate world. You don't want to have the reputation of being the pushover in the company. Now, when it comes to cultural and material goods, Bourdieu and Zahavi's theory naturally converge. Wealthy people reach a certain position in the social class, and instead of shouting and keep reminding people that they made it, they'll wear a Audemars Piguet watch or drive a Porsche. It's a costly signal to waste money. There is to court potential mates, to shove it in the face of their rivals, or just to be admired. But a signal might start losing value, as Bourdieu showed in his work. Zahavi even argues that because the modern production technique lowered the cost of clothing overall, its signaling has weakened. Instead, people show off more of their bodies through short clothing and revealing necklines. A fit body signals restraint and discipline, especially in the West. Even destinations like the Greek islands, the Amalfi Coast, or the French Riviera lost their value. They're getting flooded by the upper middle class. Signals can get costlier and costlier to command the same amount of respect. They get inflated the more widespread they get. The peacock sail evolved to get larger and larger, and different cultures can have different signals. The men of Vanuatu in the Pacific Islands show off their manhood, courage, and fitness by jumping off 100 feet with 2 tree vines wrapped around their ankles. To each their own. Now, luxury brands know that we're wired to signal, and every single one of them caters to that specific desire. The story they're selling might be craftsmanship, authenticity, or whatever, but signaling is the core desire being satisfied. However, we're not doomed to fall victim to this instinct. Signaling can be channeled to benefit yourself and society. That's what part 4 of the video is about. One of my favorite books that expanded on Rene Girard's theory is Wanting by Luc Burgess, who actually just launched his new book, The 1 and the 99. He basically shows that there is a way out. We can claim some of our agency back and resist some of the contagion that's happening around us, especially when it's harmful to us. Here's 4 ways we can resist the mimetic forces. 1. Read old books. Nassim Taleb popularized the Lindy effect. In a nutshell, non-perishable items like books, ideas, religions, diets see their life expectancy increase the longer they survive, which means that books that stood the test of time have been filtered and distilled for centuries or millennia, which means the knowledge they contain is more valuable. Old books are robust and they survive for a reason, in contrast to most modern books that will contain untested mimetic non-Lindy ideas. It's hard to read Seneca, Cicero, or Epictetus and still have the desire to keep up with the Joneses. 2. Learn to assign the real value to things. The French moralist La Rochefoucauld wrote one of my favorite aphorisms. The principal point of cleverness is to know how to value things just as they deserve. Branding and marketing is about inflating the value of goods and services so they can price in that premium when selling it to you. Manipulating supply and scarcity in a shrewd way, associating the brand with desirable people, using effective copy to persuade you to take immediate action. All of these are effective techniques that corporations are using against you. But the smartest people I know see through the smoke and mirror and assign the exact value to things. They can spot when something is actually overvalued or undervalued. 3. Seek anti-models. Having role models is great, but having anti-models is even more effective. People you don't want to be like. Most people idolize celebrities, athletes, influencers, and wealthy people. Some with highly dysfunctional lives and terrible characters. They then model what these mediators deem desirable and valuable. Instead, you might want to look deeper into their lives. Some are extremely wealthy but have no backbone. Some made their money rent-seeking without creating any value. Some are shallow, lead fake lifestyles, and only show you the most polished side of their lives. A ton of them are famous and addicted, rich and miserable, powerful but slaves to even more powerful masters. I carefully picked my anti-models that I really don't want to end up like, and use them when making important life choices. And lastly, don't try to be contrarian. This is something that Luc Burgess talks about in his work. Being contrarian or anti-mimetic just for the sake of it. That's how a lot of the hipster movement became such a joke. By trying too hard at not conforming, all the hipsters ended up looking the same. Thrift shopping may have started as a conviction to not endorse fast fashion, but it quickly became another consumerist trend to signal that you're cooler. You may find that a lot of your raw preferences are actually aligned with the mainstream, and that's okay. Being a reactionary just for the sake of it will actually harm your solid self, because other people's desires still dictate your desires. What personally helped me was spending a lot of time in solitude, a ton of trial and error, testing different cities, books, hobbies, and interests. That's how you uncover your raw preferences. If you're in touch with your idiosyncrasies, that's when you start noticing what you get energized by, and you'll naturally be anti-mimetic in the way you live, work, or create. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.